Warsaw Summit. Transform to thrive.
Mr. Secretary, first question, I think obviously to you. We used to live at least my generation, I'm 53, but people older than me and for sure younger than me, we used to think in Poland that we are living in a post-war world. Our current Prime Minister Donald Tusk said a month ago that it's not longer post-war world, it is a pre-war world. Would you use the same expression? And is it the right expression? Is it the right way to explain the times we are living in right now?
I think that the perception and description of the phase in which we are is right and justified. These are the words of the right diagnosis. And the best information from that statement of Prime Minister is that when the new government is transitioning from one government to another, they are stepping in the shoes of the former government in particularly narrow but crucial sphere of Polish political life. The right diagnosis of a threat and the right countermeasures which will be taken, and they are taken right now, are the right response, which should make us proud of the achievement also of the democratic system. And maybe this is a good moment to also express that diagnosis that we are living in a pre-war era or times. It's something what we probably miscalculated or forgotten. That the history is not ending after collapse of the former Soviet Union or collapse of any other empire. History will go on. It's not the end of the history, as some of the thinkers were expressing. It's sinusoid of a threat in which Poland has to find its place. And the best news for us, also when we are meeting here in Krakow at the ABSL summit, and we have a meeting of leaders, professionals in the security area, explaining the security environment to the higher representatives of business, that the risk which we are encountering are also aligned with the chances and opportunities. The question is, what diagnosis we will state and what countermeasures we will take. Right now, we are on a good path with this very uncertain environment.
Magdalena Dziewguć, to be honest, I'm surprised how often David Joe was mentioning, in a way, your business. I mean, cybersphere. Deputy Minister of National Defense in Poland said a week ago, after this attack against Polish news agency, that we are at cold cyber war with Russia. Do you think that we are at war when it comes to cybersphere on a single basis, every single day doing your business in Poland?
Good morning, everyone. Before I'll answer this question, let me start with an important personal story, because I kind of want to change the tone of the discussion we have here. I was born in Western Pomerania, raised by people who witnessed war, who survived war. They were all brought to Western Pomerania, Szczecin, from Siberia, from German camps, from whatever places they actually witnessed the end of the war. I heard from them, like many people in this room, from your grandparents, what war is. Next years, as you, Piotr, said at the opening, we could see Russian soldiers around. In Kluczewo, there was a huge camp of Russian soldiers, which I was seeing almost every week. We are aware of the risk and of everything related with the war risk. Still, look at us. Look at us. Every day, we were doing what we can best in our jobs to be prepared, but also to grow and move forward. And one thing that I want you to remember from this panel is be not afraid. be not afraid. Be aware of the risk. Yes, the cyber attacks are more and more intensive. They are coming. There will be more of them, and they will create more risks. But we are aware of it, and we're preparing to that every single day. So our job is not to be afraid, to look for alternatives. Our job is to focus on how to improve every single day. And that's what we're doing as part of our business life, but also as part of our citizenship duty, like everyone here in this room, every day at your work.
Really like the phrase, be not afraid, which is a quote as well from John Paul II. And this is the question to Jay Coffey. Let's imagine that you meet a friend from New York or Boston or Texas, and he or she is asking you, do you think I should invest in Poland? And your answer would be not afraid. It's a great country. Come to Poland for sure.
And I would say absolutely, for a number of reasons, and let me explain a little bit why. So Bank of New York, for those of you who don't know us, I have the responsibility and the privilege of working with about $50 trillion of client assets, and we operate in about 100 different markets around the world. The reason we're in Poland, first and foremost, the excellence as well as the resilience of the talent base. So the city we're in, for example, Wrocław, 100,000 students, 29 universities, the resiliency that has been built up over generations, right, that my fellow panelists have been speaking with, that is unparalleled anywhere in the world. So excellence and resiliency of talent base. 2, literally being situated geographically in the center of the world, the center of the European Union, but also the center of the world, connecting Asia with the United States and the rest of the Americas, being based out of the European Union. And the third aspect here is the sense of innovation. So one of the exciting attributes, one may not say that it's exciting, but if in a period of uncertainty, whether it's geopolitical or technology or financial, those periods of uncertainty actually breeds innovation. And so Poland, because of its history, because of its present, has an exciting future in terms of what innovation can bring. So BNY Mellon's very excited about being in Poland. We've been here since 2010. We're looking forward to being here for much longer. And so any of our friends who are, whether you're based in the US, Europe, or elsewhere, if you want to talk a little bit about how we see Poland, happy to talk afterwards as well.
James, what is your answer when someone is asking, should I invest in Poland?
Well, it's obviously yes. Poland is a fantastic economy, and I'm not just saying that because we're in this great country today, but you just land off the plane in Poland now, and you see fantastic modern infrastructure. You see an economy that is thriving. You see so many intelligent people. You see this innovation that we've just heard about, and that is something that puts Poland sort of out on its own in the global economy. And I think that combination of people and connectivity is unmatched. You look across the world, my job is as a global economist, and I almost comparing economies permanently. And you look at that sweet spot that Poland has of an extremely educated workforce, very good language skills with a lot of people speaking English, which is a very important skill in terms of that international connectivity nowadays as services investment comes in. And you add on top of that, that location, that ability to be a real beneficiary of relocating supply chains into Europe. So you've got these benefits on the manufacturing side, these benefits on the services side, that growing domestic economy. And that is a really, really powerful sort of combination that gives Poland an advantage, I think, going forwards in the years to come. And we're very optimistic about the Polish economy for that reason, that we see that continued investment, we see that continued dynamism in the local economy, and that's unmatched in Europe. And it's sort of, you start talking about Polish per capita growth rates, which are comparable to Asian economies, which seems almost impossible, but that's how optimistic we are about the story here in Poland.
David, one question to you, because we are going to have in a week very important elections in Poland and in Europe, elections to the European Parliament. But we are going to have one more important election in Europe and in Poland, especially the US presidential election. And a lot of people, maybe I shouldn't use word, are afraid of the result of the election, but they are really interested in it. I totally understand that you don't represent the current administration or probably the future administration, but people would like just to know your point of view, are Americans, is the United States, are going to stay in Europe, fully involved in our affairs for a longer term, or it's a great question mark, in your opinion?
Well, thanks very much. I get this question so often that I have a note card that I now have because it's on everybody's mind, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So, as you've said, this is just, the world according to Dave Geo, so that and €5 will get you a Starbucks. Trump can't just pull out of NATO. The Senate in the United States, if Trump were to win, right, so we'll just take that. If Trump were to win, he can't just pull the US out of NATO. The Senate won't allow that. There's now laws in place. But that should not give you a sense of security. The reason is because if someone like Putin felt that, okay, fine, the Americans are in, but they're not really, right? They're not really committed. That's the real problem. So in NATO, out of NATO, in Europe, out of Europe isn't the real question. Is how committed is the United States? And I think, from a Trump perspective, right, I think we know where that is. Trump doesn't see NATO in collective terms. We think of an alliance of 29 or where are we, 30 countries now. He sees countries, single countries, that invest in their own security or countries that don't invest in their security. And I think his view of the world is sort of a, God helps those who help themselves, and so I think, he's very sensitive to the idea of free riding. But even if Biden wins, Trump and Trumpism is not going anywhere. Look how hard it was for the United States Congress to pass the $61 billion needed for Ukraine. Right? 6 months of delays, Russian disinformation, lots and lots of delays. And so even if Trump were to lose, the Trumpism, that way of viewing the world, I think may be a question mark. That's true. The other thing you have to keep in mind, and it's important to understand here in Europe, is that the US, for several administrations, has been committed to a pivot to Asia. So, we here in Europe are very interested in the European security architecture, but the United States, as a general foreign approach, as a general strategy, is more interested in Asia, and that's not going to change, I think, under a Trump administration. And the war in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine actually hasn't changed that. The final thing I would say is, Trump is a known quantity here in Europe, but there are upsides to the fact that Europe may be, I don't want to say on its own, you're not on your own, NATO is still a real thing, but now is a wonderful opportunity, I think, for other countries that aren't taking collective security as seriously as they need to. It could be a bit of a political wake-up call to invest in their defense industrial base, because Trump, he does reflect a sense in the United States that it's true. The NATO has double the amount of people than the U.S. has, and Jay can correct me if I'm wrong, but the economies are about even if you take the U.S. out of NATO. And so Americans are like, well, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And so this is a wonderful opportunity to look on the bright side and to take European security, strategic autonomy, whatever you want to call it, to take the bull by the horns and say, hey, now is the time for us to really develop these capabilities. And so even if the United States isn't as reliable as it was, the European security architecture can go on.
Great answer for a totally unexpected question. Thank you so much. Mr. Secretary, that was a question about the American commitment to be and to defend Europe. How strong is, in your opinion, European commitment to defend Europe? Because at the very beginning of the war in Ukraine, it wasn't that obvious. We started with many phone conversations of the President of France, and now France is deliberating officially the idea of sending the troops into Ukraine. So it's a really great, I would say, transformation of thinking about European defense. But what's your point of view?
Piotr, tell me how to receive the question, is it worth to invest in Poland? It would be much easier to start from that point But at the end of the day, we will end up with this discussion, answering this dramatically complicated question. And maybe it's important to underline at the first line that it's not the security what is expensive. The lack of security is expensive. And what I mean is that if Europe doesn't put the right diagnosis in a place and doesn't answer the right way, the security threats, doesn't align its policy with the threat and potential risks, especially those asymmetric and hybrid risks, the cost will be even higher at the end. And of course, I understand the position of American administration. I had the privilege to participate in a meeting of President Duda in the Congress before the supplemental act was issued and voted with
Mike Johnson.
With Mike Johnson decision, and also in the meetings with Donald Trump. And I agree that more transactional approach to alliance, it's something what is challenging, but also can be beneficial. We even now observe the potential results when we hear the statements of British government's representatives who are stating that they will increase their spending to 2.5%, and even after statement of President Duda that we cannot skip, we cannot close our eyes for the spending on the level of 3% in decade perspective, for an example. Norway declared that they will spend at the 2036 3% of the gross domestic product on defense. These are changes which are induced by discussions in a Capitol Hill, also by the discussions with the Republicans and probably candidate for presidency, Donald Trump. So, having said that, Poland, as an active player with a significant role in Europe, also has to be aware that there are three factors which are necessary and vital for investments, for foreign direct investments here in Poland, and they are summarizing to our security. One, with every American investment, nuclear, technological, digital, cloud investment, our security is rising. With every $1 billion investment, Americans will have an interest in defending this infrastructure, defend these supply lines. The second, appropriate diagnosis is absolutely crucial for our allies and for investors. Whoever is in business cannot believe that analysts, former CIA officers who are employed in the corporations, that they don't have the right diagnosis of the security environment. They have access to most of the data. Your review of the data and the events which took place and was announced was quite complete, except those who are unofficial, let's say, or classified. They have exactly the same diagnosis, all the investors. They have access. The question is what government and state will do with the diagnosis of the threat which we have. And this is also what Magda Dziewguć mentioned, summarizes to better products. Investors should be aware that the scale of the cyber risks and cyber threats are summarizing to better products which will be created here by our hands, by our minds, by our engineers in this city. Just like IBM, which I had the pleasure to discuss, which is developing one of the most advanced systems and one of the safest one. Maybe too long, but as you mentioned, very complex question.
No, thank you so much. That was very optimistic. Thank you. I appreciate that. And a question to James Pomeroy, because we are celebrating 35 years of our almost first free election in Poland, 25 years in NATO, 20 years in the European Union. And I think 20 years ago, when someone would ask a question whether it's a great idea to invest in Poland, the answer would be go there, cheap labor, cheap labor. It's not the case anymore, and we are happy about it. We don't want to compete because Polish workers are cheaper, but because they are as good as in other parts of Europe, or even better. But what's your advice for us, for Poland? Because we've just heard the news about Polish GDP in this quarter, it's 2%, but mostly because of consumption, we really, really need investments. What's your advice to Poland, to Polish institutions, to Polish government, but to Polish cities, to Polish regions, how to attract more foreign direct investments?
It's a nice, easy question to answer in 60 seconds or so, isn't it? When you think about what makes Poland such an attractive place, it's worth thinking about the Venn diagram, all the different things that make Poland attractive. It is the competitiveness. That's not just in terms of the cost of labor, but the skill of labor. So we need to think about continually investing in education. That's not just at school and university levels, but retraining, making sure people are up to date with new technological skills. We're going through an AI revolution at the moment that's going to require a lot of training, a lot of upskilling of populations across the world, and as Poland puts itself at the heart of technology, that's needed. You've also got to think about location and geography. Now, Poland is actually geographically, as has been mentioned a few times already this morning, benefiting from that. How can Poland leverage that location of being close to major European markets better? Connectivity, infrastructure, those sorts of investments will go a long way there. Then you think about, beyond that, you've also got questions about the other sort of broader side of how you can be competitive in a world that's becoming more digital. And I think that's the next stage of international trade and about investment. We always think about global trade and we think about investment as going and building manufacturing plants, but that's a smaller and smaller share of global trade and investment as years go by. And the challenge is the data on services, investment and trade is extremely patchy, but what we know is that it's rising and rising and rising as a share of global trade and global investment. And that's the advantage that Poland has in terms of using that skilled labor and that critical mass of people. And there's very few economies in the world who, if you think about those areas, competitiveness, geography, skills, and so forth, that sit in the middle of it, and that's where Poland is. So it's, can you get closer and closer to being in the heart of each of those circles? Investment in infrastructure, investment in education, investment in training, but also going out to the world and making it abundantly clear that Poland is open for business, which it is, and that's going to keep bringing more and more investment in. And we're seeing it very clearly, even at HSBC, the amount of businesses we speak to across Europe who are interested in relocating here to Poland or opening additional offices or factories or whatever it turns out to be here in Poland, because a lot of those things are in place. And so my advice is don't get complacent, because competition is only going to hot up, but Poland has got a fantastic starting point on all of those things. And if it keeps going, the economy will continue to thrive in the coming years.
So similar question to Jay. Let's imagine that an investor is coming to one of your offices in the United States. He or she wants to expand their business and is asking themselves, they're asking, where should I go? What should Poland do to attract more investments?
Yeah, so Poland has a couple of different attributes going for it. We've talked about talent and the attractiveness of the local operating environment, which includes a government and public policy decision makers who are attuned to what attracts and keeps foreign direct investment in Poland. So that continuation of that, as James and others have alluded to. I think secondly, which is also important, is exercising Poland's voice at the EU level to further the promise of the European single market. As an example, the Capital Markets Union, which has been under discussion for a while now that France continues to lean in, now that the German Chancellor has voiced his advocacy and support of the CMU, the Capital Markets Union, if we get the CMU right, Poland has a pivotal role to play in terms of being that provider of choice of critical and value-added business services to service not just Polish investors and Polish companies, but the entirety of the European Union. So if we were to be able to really beef up the scale, the breadth and depth of the European financial markets, of which the CMU is going to be an important contributing factor, that's going to accrue to Poland's benefit.
And this is a question to Magdalena Dziewguć, because I was surprised, and maybe I shouldn't, that one of the key engineers from OpenAI responsible for developing artificial intelligence were Polish engineers, actually from Gdańsk, as far as I remember. Poland is a superpower when it comes to e-games, e-sport. And how important is this image of Polish influence upon IT business to create an image of a country where it's worth to invest?
Well, it's not an image. Actually, it's a data point. Google itself has something called Google Brain, which started all the work that brought us to OpenAI and many more projects with generative AI. Many Polish mathematicians, also from Krakow, were part of the team. Actually, Krakow was one of the first engineering offices that Google had in Europe, where products and advanced technologies were developed. Today, it's the second largest city for us in Poland, where we're growing our engineering offices. I'm not sure if all of you are aware of the fact that the most advanced economy in the world from the engineering perspective is Germany. In Germany, currently, the estimation is that they have 1.9 million of engineering-related jobs. In Poland, it's 1.2 million, and we're significantly smaller. So, you know, there's nothing like coincidence. There are only signs. It's 4th of June today, very important date, and all of you in this room are capable of going to your headquarters and present investment plan in Poland. This investment can be related with everything we talked about already: biotechnology, cybersecurity, AI, data science. And based on this engineering talent pool, which is available here, also in Krakow, you can become the next important R&D center for your company. This is what should we all be doing, based on the data points, based on the fact that we have highly skilled, very efficient, and also competitive in terms of the cost, talent pool here in Poland, ready to build the solutions of the future.
And a question to David Joe, because I like the message of Jacek Siewiera to the world: invest more in Poland, you will be safer. The more you invest, the safer you are, because we have a reason to be here then and to defend our country. Is it the right idea to think about it?
Yes. No.
Thanks.
Yeah, great answer.
As I would say to my students, okay, give me more, right? On what basis are you making that that claim? No, security is really important. The only thing I would add is that to think like an intelligence officer is to not think about how we view things, and how do we view the investments, how do we view security, how does this look from Beijing? How does this look from Tehran? How does this look from Moscow? And always keep front and center of your mind, this is what we are doing, right? But in the intelligence business, we used to say, reality doesn't matter. Perception is reality, right? And so what are the things that are happening here, and how do they look? And I'm not saying by any means don't do them, right? You know, fill your boots, do everything that you need to do and more. But always be careful and be cautious. As I said in my talk, if something is looking good, right? When you climb to the top, my son plays King of the Hill, right? You know, and there's snow and you push the other kids off the hill. As you climb to the top of that mountain, there's more and more other players that are going to want to pull you down. And so as you get higher up, just take a second, look around, and understand where those threats are coming from.
And a question to you, Mr. Secretary, because in the time of the war, probably it was in 1944, at the beginning of the Second World War, American national defense wasn't so strong. It's really hard to imagine how unprepared, in a way, Americans were for the war. But in 1944, Japanese were able to build 3 aircraft carriers, and Americans, as far as I remember, during 1 year, they were able to build more than 80. So that's really hard even to assess how strong was the development of national defense in the United States during the war. What is going on in Ukraine is horrible. We should do whatever we can to avoid it and to stop the war as fast as we can. But how important for development of Poland can be the development of national defense industry in Poland? Because we are talking about really, really high technology investment in our country. The best engineers, the best idea, the best technology. And that can be very positive for our industry and for our future.
Thank you for that question. And thank you for your answer once again. Absolutely, absolutely brilliant one. I think that those two things are also aligned. So, on one hand, Poland has to be opened for opportunities and foreign direct investments from players and partners from other regions of the world than only Europe. This is something what I strongly believe in. And this will be beneficial for Europe itself. And what I mean is to attract and allow, admit and implement know-how, technologies and capabilities of the like-minded countries like South Korea, like Turkey from within the NATO, to also expand our technological capabilities to produce, because their lines in their countries are already full of orders. Procurements are 3-4 years ahead, fully ordered. But we can use their technology to expand, like we do with our main strategical partner, with the United States. Why it's beneficial for Europe? There's no better place to mention about it. Competition. If we have on European market only one hegemonic producer of ammunition and one capital group, which has the access to 75% of the market, there is no competition and lack of any effort. But if we can implement competition in the market, and this can be done in Poland from the scratch, so with the lowest burden of changing the culture of companies, changing the unions, we can do it by foreign direct investments. In Poland, by providing the access to European market, we can do it in joint ventures with Americans. On Polish soil, this is something, and this is the advantage which we cannot omit, we cannot skip it. We cannot forget that we have this window of opportunity right now. By choosing those partners, and this is the second part of this question, we have to be highly cautious with who we are talking to. Because in a world when the supply chains are shortening, cooperation with the partners is necessary to be deepening. Because of the shortened supply chains, we have to cooperate with our allies, with the credibility and accountability for their position. From AP4, it's not incident that I'm mentioning about South Korea and the partners, for example, like Japan, who are partnering also the NATO as the AP4. Because their technological capabilities, their approach, even the standardization among the STANAG, which is NATO broad standardization, is the right thing to do. We have to align our policy in the investment with our security policy. This is also the lesson which United States are taking right now. They are reframing their policy to be more aligned with the like-minded countries, with the countries which are taking the responsibility for their security. And this was also the key point, key takeaway from the speech of Jake Sullivan, my counterpart in the diplomatic matter, 5 months ago. We also have to take this lesson and cooperate with our strategic, most important allies, but also like-minded countries who are working in the same standardization, but implement data technology in Europe to make the market more vibrant. That's the best solution.
Thank you. I want to follow on that issue and ask a question to David Joe. How we should use this moment wisely in Poland? Because we are buying, for example, F-35 or Abrams tanks. This is a great equipment. These are great tools. But how we should use this moment when we are spending almost 4% of our GDP for national defense, which is more when it comes to percentage of GDP, we are spending more than Americans. How we should use this moment wisely for the future of our country, not only buying great equipment, but building the know-how for the future of Poland.
Yeah, I think Jacek has it exactly right. There are many countries in the world, and I'll be polite and not name them, that spend a lot of money on exquisite technology, exquisite defense systems, and they can't really use them. They don't know how to use them. They don't know how to maintain them. So I would say take ownership of the things that you develop. Take ownership of the things that you have. A tool is only as good as how you know how to use it when it matters, right? If I have something and I don't know how to use it, then what's the point of having it? So there's a lot of money involved, but I would also look at doctrine. Jacek talked about getting involved with allies, partners. How do we do that? How do we know how to use tanks and airplanes and helicopters? We practice. We have doctrine. We think about it. We have war games. And these are the kinds of things that if I were honored to give advice, I would say, master these things. Don't just have them. Don't just look at the percentage of the GDP. Because a lot of countries spend a lot of money and get nothing for it. So whatever you have, learn how to use it. We see the Ukrainians right now, they're getting so much stuff, but it doesn't accord with what their doctrine is. It doesn't accord with their training up until a couple of years ago. And it takes time to absorb all of these great things. They're great strategic tools. But they don't just come with a driver's manual that's easy to follow. And so integrating these things, even over the last couple of years, I didn't realize that we talk about NATO standard. There's a million different NATO standards, right? Even certain bits of kit don't work with other bits of kit, even though they're all NATO standard. So the time is right now, to really own it, to master it, to practice, to develop doctrine, to think deeply, and then to rehearse with allies for hopefully a day that will never come.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What a pleasure it was to have these people on the stage for the first Clash of the Titans of the ABSL conference. J.E. Coffey, Magdalena Dziewguć, James Pomeroy, David Joe, Jacek Siewiera. Thank you so much.